Hey guys, welcome to our workflow video. This is our most requested behind the scenes video on our second channel. In this video, we're going to tell you everything from how we start a video all the way to literally exporting it to YouTube. The way we come up with ideas, it's a different process for every person. Personally, what we'll do is we'll think of maybe an effect that we like, or we'll think of some sort of concept that might be fun to play with. For example, what if there was an alien on your head?
Yeah, sometimes it's as simple as just having an inside joke that we find funny and we're like, all right, let's make this real.
Yeah, once you have an idea, you want to kind of set up a little bit of a plot. Generally speaking, a short video story follows a simple pattern. You have normal life for your character, you have a problem that's created, and that problem is solved.
One really important thing is when you're coming up with a concept for a piece, don't forget what the ending is going to be. Very often we come up with an idea for a video and we even start shooting and we don't even know how it's going to end. And then we sit there on set going, oh crap, we really should have planned out this editing. Because honestly, it's the part of the piece that ties everything together and it resonates the most with everyone.
The next step that you want to do is write it down. Simply writing it down lets you get the flow out and try to write it as if you're actually watching it. Some people like to make storyboards. We prefer shot lists.
Yeah, when you're working with a small group of people, it's just a shot list is completely sufficient. As long as you know all the moments that you need to see in order to make the piece work.
Just try to always focus on having whatever you're shooting, whatever you're putting in front of the camera, always have it progress things. Always have things moving forward. Each shot is like a sentence in a story.
Yeah, so once the concept has come together and you have what you want to do on paper, you start breaking it down into the parts you need to get to make the piece. We call that pre-production. Essentially, we go through, pick out people, costumes, props, locations, separating it into all its pieces, and going out and individually taking care of each and every one.
So once you have all your stuff gathered, and your camera's prepared, your people are scheduled, your team's gonna show up and you're gonna make the video, you have now entered production. And in production is where you actually execute the piece. Most of you guys are probably just working with your friends and you're doing things for free. Always bring food. People will show up for free if they know there is pizza. And pizza is an inexpensive way to pay your crew. When we're in production, we like to work through our piece chronologically. But there are times when you actually need to jump around chronologically in the piece for shots that make sense.
Basically, it's good to take the shot list, storyboard, however you've planned out your piece, and look at the assortment of things you have to do that day and try and group them into the most efficient way possible. If you know you're going to have the camera in one place and you need to get a lot of moments and angles from one certain position, get there, run through it all, and then move on. Because it takes a lot of time to move people to one spot and then move them back. So you basically just want to keep people moving as little as possible between each shot or setup.
So we here as Corridor Digital actually have a little bit of a team now to help us do this kind of stuff. Our friend Jake Watson is basically our producer. He's the guy who will help us organize the props, costumes, people, and all the stuff we need to make a shoot happen, aka producer for the production.
Now, one really important thing to remember is sometimes things don't go as planned on set and you have to make changes on the fly. That's completely normal. It never goes 100% as planned.
Also, when you're in production, make sure you keep track of your memory cards, your batteries, and all the other kind of resources you will need for your camera to make sure the day goes smoothly.
So, you have all your memory cards and you've got all the footage on it and you want to make this video. This is where we enter the editing phase. And there's a lot of definitions for what people consider editing, but this is what editing actually is. Editing is taking your footage and chopping it up and playing it in the sequence sandwich. Editing, see, this is hard. Editing is no more than taking your footage, chopping it up in order, and putting that into a sequence. That's all it is, just getting it there to watch.
Now, when you're editing, you're not gonna add VFX here. You're not gonna add color or sound or any of that kind of stuff.
You don't want to do VFX too early on because sometimes the length of the clips change and that just can create a big pain for you later where you have to retime things and do.
You don't even know what
work.
shot you're gonna use.
Yeah, I mean, what the heck?
You find that this shot's out of focus, this shot's better, etc., and you work your cut down until you have your final edit.
Yeah.
Still no sound, still no effects. You might be putting, temp sound in there just in case it's hard to imagine.
You're going to be wanting to get feedback on your work every step of the way because other people's opinions and ideas and thoughts usually help improve the piece.
So after you finish shooting your piece, you have all your raw footage, you're going to put it on your computer. Pay attention to what you're doing with the footage. You want to keep it organized and you want to keep your structure clean. So you create a project folder. Inside that project folder, you're going to have your edits, you're going to have your music, your sound, your VFX files. You'll also have a folder for your footage. You can call it footage. You can call it whatever you want. Just keep it understandable and put all your footage in there. Your editing program will need to know where the footage is when you start working with it. If it's on your desktop or it's sitting on your main hard drive in like some random folder, you're going to lose it and things are going to get messy. Visual effects. All right. So you got your edit. You know which shots are going to have VFX. Instead of exporting your entire sequence, you're going to go shot by shot and only pick the shots that have VFX. You're going to send those to the program. Something like Premiere, it's automated. You can simply select your shot, right click, and say replace with After Effects composition.
It's really sweet. We use the feature all the time. It's awesome.
But in other programs, it's not entirely that simple. What you can do is you can open After Effects, import that raw footage file, and you'll set the in point and the out point of that file to match the in point and out point of the file in your edit.
Basically, you want to keep your shots in the highest quality format possible. You do not want to lose quality having to go back and forth between these programs. That's silly. Lose all that quality when you have to upload it to YouTube, silly.
So as I said earlier, there's a lot of different programs out there, and there's a lot of different ways you can go about editing your footage. But over the years, we've really tried to perfect our system, and I think we have something that works really fast and really efficient. So we work in all Adobe. We use Adobe Premiere for our editing, and we use After Effects for most of our compositing and visual effects. Now, when you're editing in Premiere, you don't have to do any transcoding. You can pretty much work with any raw file format that's out there. So that makes that very simple. It helps to also have a faster computer with a good GPU.
When we start VFX, we like to split up the work based off of our specializations. I tend to do a lot more like motion graphics heavy work. So when it comes to bright lasers and stuff, I do that. Nico has been doing a lot more 3D work than I have. So when it comes to lighting and rendering a scene and making sure that's all like locked in and good, he handles that. For me, I also handle some other specialized 3D stuff as far as like doing like liquid simulations and like object tracking and little things like that. And so when we combine them all together, we have a really, really good VFX workflow from start to finish.
Also, quick pro tip for you guys. If you know that you're going to be doing motion tracking or stabilization to your footage, shoot at a higher shutter speed to eliminate motion blur. I'd recommend at 1/120 or higher. So, after I've done my effects, I need to export the clip in the highest quality format I can. But something like uncompressed is way too big and doesn't even play back in real time. So, there's basically two codecs out there that work for this. If you're on a Mac, you can use ProRes. It's super high quality, but it still plays back and you can actually edit with it on your computer. If you're on PC, you can use something called DNX HD, which is made by Avid. This one's cross-platform. First, you'll need QuickTime, which is free, and just simply do a Google search for DNX HD, and you can download that codec. And what this basically is, it's a super high quality codec that will not eliminate any data from your image, so you'll preserve all of that crisp, high quality, awesome work you've been doing in your effects program, and you'll bring it back into your edit. So you'll pick your export settings, you'll pick QuickTime, you'll pick Avid DNX HD as your video format. And then there's this little window that pops up that has all these crazy options. Here's what you need to know. First off, 709 and RGB levels are the two different kinds of color spaces that the codec can use. Just pick the RGB levels button, ignore 709. Then there's some stuff for alpha. Alpha means transparency. So if you are trying to export a video with transparency to be layered over another video in the future, that's what that's for. For the most part, you can just ignore that. Just be aware of what you're shooting in, your resolution, and your frame rate. But then you'll also see the data rate. You'll see one that says 115, 175, 35, etc. Basically, that refers to the quality. 175 is the max, 115 is around the middle, and then like 35 is really low. Finally, you're going to see something called bit depth or color depth. This is where things can get kind of weird, because for the most part, the vast majority of you guys out there are working with 8-bit footage. What this means is that your footage only has 256 values of red, 256 values of green, and 256 values of blue to define the color of your footage. Now, better cameras, and I'm talking like $10,000 plus, can shoot in 10 bits or more, where you actually have 1,000 values of red, 1,000 values of green, and 1,000 values of blue. What this means is as you start color correcting and you start pulling certain colors out and muting other colors, you'll have a crisper, cleaner image with less artifacting and less banding and all other sorts of weird issues that you'll get from 8-bit footage. So 10-bit footage is the best if you have it. For most of you, 8-bit will be fine. But just be aware that it exists.
Now that we have all the VFX shots done, what we do is we take them all and we bring them right back into the edit and complete our locked cut of the edit. Everything is there, everything is final, and we are not going to be making any more changes. This is the point at which we start splitting off into various areas, such as Sound design, since we have all the VFX in there, we know what sounds we have to match up to the footage. Music, since everything's timed and everything is kind of, put together, we have a good idea for how the piece flows. And also, we can move on to color grading. Nico usually handles the initial round of color grading, while I shift my focus to doing sound design or music.
Once you have your VFX completely done, your edit is completely locked. There's literally nothing else going into your edit. Now it's time to color grade.
What's up, nerds?
So,
I can't wait to see this potion!
So first things first, you're going to take your timeline and you're going to flatten it. Rather than having clips all over the place, you're going to try to flatten everything down to one video track. It'll make color grading easier. We use Davinci Lite. It's actually free. You can get it off the Blackmagic website. And we'll do another piece talking about color grading more in depth. But basically at this point, I go through and I correct any color mistakes, I correct any exposure mistakes, and then I stylize the footage. From here, I'll export our master file, which is once again a DNX HD file, which has both the video and the sound. And then, from that master file, I'll make any other exports I need to make, such as H.264 exports for YouTube. So when you're doing your final H.264 settings for YouTube, there's a couple of specific settings you will want to pick. First off, your bit rate is important. You have the options between VBR and CBR, variable bitrate or constant bitrate. Constant bitrate gives you the most consistent performance, though the size is a little bit bigger. We recommend at least 8,000 kilobits per second or higher. We actually export most of our pieces at 13 megabits per second, aka 13,000 kilobits per second. Audio can basically be encoded into an MP4 format, which is also referred to as AAC. It's very similar to MP3. 128 kilobits per second or higher is totally fine for your good audio.
So, I hope you guys learned something from this. That's what I say at the end of every video, but I really mean it. It's a really, really, really important thing to get a bearing on, because if you're going to be doing a lot of projects, it's something you're going to want to nail down and just become very efficient with. You're going to get good fortune, good health, good relationships, everything.
You get even more good fortune and good health and good relationships if you follow us on Twitter.
On Facebook too, if you wish. We post different types of things on Twitter and Facebook. Let's talk about the workflow of Twitter.
But until then, have fun making videos. Good luck.